States, soybeans, food crisis. Review of the China-Soybean War. The four major grain traders jointly attempted to short China, but were defeated by Sinograin. In 2001, China opened up its soybean market to the United States after joining the WTO. Unprepared, a large amount of U.S. soybeans poured in. Many Chinese soybean companies went bankrupt. Soybean farmers had no income, and soybean prices hit bottom. When the four major U.S. grain traders attempted to deeply strike Chinese soybean farmers, the China National Grain Reserve Administration Group stepped forward and fought back with the soybeans purchased in advance. After 2 years of price war, it forced U.S. grain traders to compromise. What exactly is the soybean war between China and the United States? What will be its final outcome? Super brand, the soaring BYD is already on the way. Let us take a closer look at this video. China has a population of 1.4 billion, and its daily food consumption is extremely large. If the local supply is not perfect, many people will go hungry, so the government has formulated many policies to prevent this situation. One of the important standards is the 1.8 billion mu red line, that is, China must ensure that 1.8 billion mu of arable land is used for growing grain, and no one may occupy it in any form, otherwise it will violate the criminal law and endanger food security. China not only relies on administrative means, but also strengthens agricultural production by cultivating excellent grain varieties, providing subsidies, and strengthening guidance. It has basically achieved food self-sufficiency and guaranteed people's livelihood. China has a significant advantage in the production of rice and wheat. It is precisely relying on the high yield of these two staple foods that the current food pattern has been built, and a major breakthrough in per capita distribution has been achieved, ensuring that everyone has food to eat and can eat enough. However, in terms of another staple food, corn, China is slightly inferior, with an annual output of only 276 million tons, while the United States has 380 million tons. In addition, the production of sorghum and soybeans is also low, with more than 100 million tons imported each year. Most of the import share is occupied by American grain traders, especially soybeans. It accounts for about 30% to 40% of the Chinese market, and many ocean-going ships loaded with soybeans sail from the United States to China every year. Why is the soybean production in the United States so huge? Because of its good geographical location, excellent natural environment, flat land, and developed water system, it is conducive to planting, and mechanization also reduces costs. Originally, the soybean production in North America was not high. Some merchants plundered wild soybeans everywhere to obtain good varieties. After long-term cultivation, various varieties appeared, which promoted the increase of soybean production. After the United States became the world hegemon, it invested heavily in scientific research, especially in the field of agricultural science. Many emerging technologies have emerged to provide strong support for agricultural production. At the same time, the United States provides huge subsidies for agricultural production. When farmers grow specific crops, the government subsidizes the price in various forms, especially soybean subsidies, so farmers love to grow soybeans. For a long time, the United States has a large amount of soybean reserves. Tempted by money, it seizes the market at a low price, cultivates users, changes the pattern, manipulates prices, and seeks more benefits. After the end of World War II, the United States used this method to occupy many spaces and vigorously promote agricultural products. The agricultural markets of many countries fell and became places for it to control at will. Unlike China, the United States, as a capitalist country, has its grain industry controlled by four large companies, such as ADM, Bunge, Cargill, and Louis Dreyfus, all of which are giants. When capital is chasing profits, the four major grain traders control more than 80% of the U.S. market. With the help of globalization and the strength of the United States, they can easily expand to small and medium-sized countries and seize the market. A long time ago, the four major grain traders coveted China because of its large population and potential business opportunities. In 2001, China joined the WTO and opened up the agricultural crop market in accordance with regulations, and they entered the market. China, which had just entered the World Economic System, was attacked by the four major grain traders and Wall Street financiers because it was unfamiliar with financial rules. By the time it reacted, it was too late to turn the tide. This was the first Soybean War between China and the United States. After learning in advance that China would join the WTO, Wall Street speculators speculated on the soybean demand of Chinese grain traders, causing the popularity of soybean futures to soar, and the price reached a peak in December 2001. Chinese soybean companies bought 8 million tons of soybeans without knowing the truth, hoping to sell them after the price rose. Before the Chinese New Year, the price was halved and continued to fall, leaving soybeans in their hands. At the craziest moment, the price of soybeans per ton soared to 5,500 yuan, which was only 2,300 yuan at ordinary times, more than doubling, and the futures market went crazy. As soon as the U.S. grain traders closed the net, the bubble burst. Just this one time of financial operation error, many Chinese edible oil companies were on the verge of bankruptcy. Their products had no market, and they were overwhelmed by the low-priced soybeans from the United States, losing the initiative and being bought up by U.S. grain traders. The most tragic are the Chinese soybean farmers. At the beginning of the year, soybeans were scarce, and they thought they could benefit from planting them. Unexpectedly, after only 1 year, the soybeans produced were ignored, and their efforts were wasted. In the first Soybean War, Chinese companies lost, and the four major U.S. grain traders took the opportunity to enter, control many high-quality grain companies at low prices, accumulate initially, and grab market share and profits. At the end of 2004, China's soybean-related enterprises were reshuffled, leaving only more than 90 companies, 64 of which were controlled by foreign companies and only 30 were purely Chinese-owned. Almost all of them were wiped out and suffered a bloodbath. In this process, most of the surviving Chinese soybean companies were state-owned enterprises, and privately held companies were eliminated. The four major U.S. grain traders launched a fierce attack, dealing a heavy blow to Chinese companies that had just entered the World Economic Order. At a time of crisis, China Grain Reserves Corporation, founded in 2000, stepped forward. Its full name is China Grain Reserves Corporation. It manages grain reserves vertically under the direct leadership of the state to ensure food security. When the four major grain traders in the United States frequently launched attacks, China Grain Reserves Corporation quietly stepped forward, built a solid shield to resist the crazy offensive, and absorbed domestic agricultural products to enrich inventory and resist foreign invasion. All this was done quietly, and the American grain traders did not notice this change. In 2006, they used the excuse of reduced soybean production in the United States to fabricate a food crisis, in an attempt to take over the Chinese soybean market, but an accident occurred. That year, natural disasters and man-made disasters caused grain production in many countries to be destined to decrease, and the international grain situation was turbulent. At the same time, the U.S. biofuel revolution also reduced grain production, and the global food crisis was unstoppable. With this momentum, the four major grain traders in the United States attempted to re-enter the Chinese market and defeat Chinese soybean companies. This was the second soybean war between China and the United States. Wall Street tycoons were still pushing behind the scenes, and grain traders acted as pioneers. In the agricultural product markets of other countries, the four major grain traders in the United States have made a lot of money, expanded wildly, and made huge profits. Now they are trying to do the same in the Chinese market and get a share of the pie. However, this soybean war is unusual. Sinograin has already quietly stockpiled a large amount of soybeans, which is far beyond the imagination of American grain traders, and there is strong support and many conveniences behind it. At the beginning of the financial war, the four major grain traders in the United States bought Chinese soybeans at high prices, trying to make our country fall into the international food chaos, but Sinograin was not afraid. "I will release more if you buy more." For a whole year, no matter how much soybeans American grain traders bought, there were always more in the market, and Chinese soybeans seemed inexhaustible. The originally proud giants were afraid and planned to withdraw. As international capital, the four major grain traders in the United States attempted to control the Chinese market, but did not want to pay too much. Sinograin's soybean purchases require real money investment, which makes them hesitate. Moreover, if Sinograin is weak in the future and cannot continue to purchase soybeans, resulting in the depletion of grain reserves in the eyes of American grain traders, this will be a bottomless pit and not worth investing too much. The four major grain traders once purchased soybeans and then sold them one after another, pushing down the price and no longer seeking profits. Unexpectedly, the financial crisis in 2008 broke the capital chain of Wall Street elites. In order to quickly obtain huge liquidity, Wall Street sold soybeans in a big way, causing a huge market shock. The four major grain traders in the United States had no choice but to follow suit, and their decent exit turned into a rout, with huge losses. In the Second Sino-US Soybean War, China won a great victory. At that time, the four major grain traders in the United States came in force, and Sinograin turned the tide at a critical moment and protected my country's food security. After this large-scale impact, Chinese soybean companies reshuffled, the upstream dominated by foreign capital loosened, a large number of private capital poured in, and private enterprises rose to occupy a place in various fields. This failure taught the four major grain traders in the United States a lesson, allowing them to recognize the strength of Sinograin, no longer arrogant, and turn to cooperate with Chinese companies. This is a major victory for China. Sinograin standing up at a critical moment was not a casual move, but relying on strong strength. China has come from poverty and has always attached importance to food security. It has established a grain reserve system early and has a profound foundation. Sinograin was not founded from scratch when it was first established in 2000. Its warehouses stored many staple grains and cash crops. It has 82 directly affiliated grain depots across the country and branches in various provinces, and purchases countless grains every year. Sinograin has strong capital. When grain prices rise, it is a brake to stabilize the market, and when grain prices fall, it is a valve to inject vitality, which is enough to deal with American grain traders. Sinograin relies on its special functions to protect the rights and interests of farmers, provide a buffer for agricultural enterprises, help agriculture, and keep Chinese people from hunger. This role is difficult for foreign countries to achieve. After winning the Soybean War, China summed up its experience and vigorously promoted agricultural revitalization plans, such as expanding soybean planting, increasing production, and subsidizing soybean farmers to improve soybean reserves. At the same time, China is actively exploring new soybean import channels. In the first quarter of 2021, it imported nearly 1 million tons of soybeans from Russia, Ukraine, and other places, reducing its dependence on soybeans from the United States and South America and improving its risk resistance. China's soybean pattern has changed drastically under a set of combined punches. Domestic efforts to increase production are also looking for sources abroad. The impact of the Soybean War is still continuing. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more great content. See you next time.